Hey everybody, my name is Chris. This is Extra Normal Podcast. I'm supposed to be going as Christoph. I screwed that up. Alongside me is
Trick or Treat. That's my new name
your name. Your name is Trick or Treat.
for the month of October.
That's your new name. Okay, Trick or Treat. Can we call you Miss Treat?
Whatever you do, don't call me Trixie.
Okay, I don't know what that is. How you been?
Good. How are you?
Wait, who's Trixie? Is that a reference?
I just feel like
Trixie sounds like a lady who works at like a diner somewhere. Like Trixie. That's what that sounds like to me. But I don't know. Who could say? We are back. We are here. It is officially the month of October. And before we go forward, I have to recant one of my statements I made, I think in the previous episode or maybe 2 episodes ago. But I openly and very proudly stated that Halloween Haunt rules and that it is better than Universal and all that fun stuff. I think I might need to take that back at this point because we did it.
You're a liar.
I know.
You lied to everybody. And now they wasted their money. You guys bought your tickets and
it's fine.
You were bamboozled.
It's fine. It was we went.
I think this is what happened because I've worked in a lot of theater my whole life. And so like I think the first show, there's a series of events that you have to like kind of work through. And so looking at Halloween Haunt, if you were to look at it in a theatrical point, you know, it's like they ran through the mazes, you know, I'm sure they had their friends and family do a whole thing before the actual opening night happened. What are you doing? Leave me alone.
It's flipped over.
Leave me alone. And I feel like it was just like getting out all the kinks. And so unfortunately the first night sometimes sucks because there's so many things, like there wasn't enough scares in certain parts of the mazes where there should have been, and just like little things. But all in all, the mazes too was kind of like the same old thing. I'm always looking as a professional makeup artist, like I'm always looking for really cool makeup to get really inspired. And I just wasn't inspired. Somebody told me that Horror Nights is supposed to be really good because I've been disappointed by Horror Nights in the past. If anybody knows of any great like spooky events and things too, please leave it on our YouTube. Write it down in the comments if you're watching us live.
And that actually gets me to it. So if, by the way, I always forget to, but make sure you like, subscribe, follow, all that stuff. We're on Twitch, Twitter, all the tests, TikTok, YouTube, all that fun stuff. So yeah, provide a comment if you know any. I mean, and I know inevitably a lot of people are going to be like, do the 13th floor and sign a waiver.
Right.
I don't know if I'm doing that. I don't want someone touching me. I don't want it. I don't feel like it.
I feel like
it. Seems annoying.
If we got a big group to go and do it together, I might be interested in going.
Okay. We could do it. I just know.
But
I know
if anybody's been, please again comment. Like if you're like watching us live, or email us. If you guys have been, like, give us some tips and tricks because I have heard from people that they'll straight up like cut your hair, and that's like my one big issue being a professional cosmetologist is like, don't fucking touch my hair.
Why would I pay someone to give me a bad haircut?
So I think what I would do is I would wear a cheap wig. But I mean, again, like they could rip it off, like because you sign a waiver. So I don't like. I'm like torn because like part of me like wants to do it because I feel like
it's part of the rush. But I don't want.
I don't know what to expect, and I that's the whole thing with Halloween Haunt. It's like that shit scares the fuck out of me. But at the same time, I kind of like gravitate towards it because it just seems really fucking cool.
Yeah, it's like for that kind of stuff. Like I like a little bit of campiness. I don't like when they're like, no, this shit's gonna be serious. Like,
right?
I don't want to be fucking serious. I don't want to pay someone to be fucking serious. I don't want to be fake waterboarded. No, thank you. I'm not gonna pay you to do that. I'm not gonna pay you for that. You do it on your own time. So yeah, we're gonna fill up some more Halloween activities, but the lawn is full of our shit, our Halloween shit. It's fully decorated. We
Mhm.
have all our fun. We just put up Freddie today, and he's a
Yeah.
joy.
We got I don't know if y'all had seen the from Lowe's, when Lowe's, like, back in fucking August, they had some really fucking cool Halloween decor, and they had a giant Freddy that talks, and he's like animatronic, and he's moving, and
Sure.
his fingers move with this like spikes. It's really cool. So I'll share it in my stories too, so people
Yeah.
can see. But yeah, it's pretty. I really like our decorations this year.
I think we did okay.
I mean, I think we always do a pretty good job, but I feel like, yeah. I'm really
One
happy
thing
with
we
it.
don't have in the lawn is vampires, which is a real shame. I wish we had a couple vampires, because we're in the mood for vampires. Last episode we talked about Elizabeth Bathory and
Mhm.
Enrique Marti, as like the real life vampires, I guess, the most like serial killer ish like reality version of vampires.
Right.
Now we're gonna get into the lore and mythology of vampires.
Yes.
Every single society, like, it seems like for the most part, has some vampire myth, some life force, usually in the form of blood, kind of some entity, most of the time undead, sometimes living,
Mhm.
that will suck the blood out of you, suck the life force out of you, all that good stuff. So what were you able to? You want to be up? You want to
Sure.
be up to tea?
Sure. Hold on.
Hope you're up to
I
par
took my
since you're up to
notes,
tea. You
everybody.
did. You took paper notes like an old lady.
So just before we get into my notes, like, for me personally, I really like corn. Just kidding.
Oh, you
Stupid.
did it. That meme is done. You
It's
can't
done.
do that. Official
Because I
ban
always
2
use that
weeks
word
ago.
though for me. So every time I think of it now, I'm like, oh
From
my god.
me? That's because you're a Cali girl. From me?
For me.
And I always say like, because
y-
I'm a Cali boy. I say like way too much.
Anyway, shut up.
It's
So
like too much.
like
You got caught.
like I did it again. I love the idea of the romanticized vampires of the 18th century. When I got into vampires, it was, that era, of New Orleans. And there's just something about it that really really drew me to it. The Anne Rice stories, and Interview with the Vampire in the 90s, like, great movies came out that were vampire-esque. And so I that's the idea of the vampire that I've always been drawn to. But I wanted to go like deeper and further, and look at folklore and mythology and true legends of true events that happened in history, because I had never really researched it. It was always like, people are gonna think I'm crazy, but I always thought that vampires were real. The battery's going up.
Oh, look at you. You
I
let me
know,
know.
I did my job.
Wow.
For once.
Precision. You keep talking though.
Are you okay with me still going though?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you.
No, I just didn't know if you wanted it for the YouTube live or for the YouTube.
Yeah, no, straight to you. You have your solo shot right now.
Oh,
The cameras are on you.
Okay, I'm scared. Okay, so let's start. I can barely read my writings because it's so fucking dim in here. In my studies about vampires, I really wanted to get to the roots and origin stories. So I thought the best place to start was with the natives and all of their beliefs. And it's interesting because different, like, places that I was reading and searching, majority of natives don't believe in vampires. So that whole, like, movie Twilight, that was never really truly based on actual, like, the history of natives believing in vampires. They did, although though they did believe that there was a tribe, the Hopi tribe. They believed in more of like their, it was like a priest or a sorcerer who on an event accidentally victimized like one of his patients, if you will. And but instead he fed off of their fear and anguish. So there's this when I've been looking throughout history, there's this thing that coincides with vampires, the bloodsuckers, but also known as stealing your essence. Like they can take your essence of life. And you've seen that in some vampire movies, where they're more telepathic, like where they're psychic. And so there's this whole other element to the vampires other than I want to suck your blood, and so it's really fascinating because in different stories in history, some of them don't suck blood at all. It's more like they suck your essence, which is funny because like watching what's the reality vampire show?
Oh, the fake one? What we do in the shadows?
Yeah. What we do in the shadows. There's the energy.
That is what. That is a brilliant piece of writing because we all know
it's hilarious, but at the same time, like that's supposed to be like the essence. Like they're sucking the energy out of you. So it's like obviously fictional in the show, but in reality, in a sense, they're sucking the essence out of you. So whatever the correlation there. When I was doing the research, it just made me laugh a little bit because I thought of that. So that was in maybe, I don't know, in your studies, or if anybody watching us live, anybody wants to, who's listening to this on our podcast, if they want to email us. When I was doing, my research, I couldn't find any other native that believed in the blood sucking vampire. The only story I could get was from the Hopi that they believed in this one situation where they suck the essence out of somebody because of their fear and anguish.
Yeah,
did you want to chime in?
I know. Well, I know skinwalkers are a big thing in Native American culture, which is like this shape shifting, which gets a little bit to Bram Stoker's. But I think I think that's right. That amongst the Native American
that would be
cultures, it's a little harder to find vampires.
Yeah, they did. Well, not all of them, but there was one, and I'm going to totally mess up their name. Please, like, don't be offended. Like, I love Native culture and history.
It's a lot of.
It's just hard. It's just hard for me to
prepping for a fuck
pronounce.
Here we go.
The Kulet.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm trying.
I hope that's right. If not,
the Kulet tribe. They believe that they were descendants of wolves that were changed into man. And I thought that was like really fascinating and beautiful. And I would like doing that research. I was like, gosh, I would love to meet somebody of that tribe and to just really, because with natives, they don't really, I mean, there are, documentation, but they like to tell stories, and it's all in their brains and brought down from generation to generation. So I just would love to talk to a native about that because I just think it's so beautiful. Question. So coming back, like research, like stories that we've heard along the way, and I would like like our people's opinion also. Do you think the chupacabra is a vampire?
But by definition, yeah, because it's like a famous bloodsucker. Yeah. I mean, because that's what it does. It sucks the blood of goats, right? Isn't that the legend of the chupacabra? Is they basically are like little like vampire foxes or weasels or whatever.
I mean, it would just make sense that they're considered. So when people say that vampires aren't real, like there you go. I mean, obviously,
but is a chupacabra real? That's the question we have to answer on another episode. I don't know. I honestly like with the chupacabra. Like,
I think the chupacabra is real.
My default is to be very skeptical, but I haven't done the most amount besides seeing like
folklore
stuff on like shows and YouTube and stuff like that. I haven't like done the deepest dive on chupacabra.
I've watched like some documentaries.
I've seen some stuff, but
where they've found like the animal parts and just things where you're just like that, like no species can do that. Like, so I believe that they're real. I truly do.
Okay. Well,
but I also believe like human, or maybe once human vampires are real also.
Yeah, that's interesting with the Native American thing. Let's travel over to Europe because Europe is, you said that there's not much like lore and belief in vampires in Native America, but in Europe it is all over the place. Most cultures have a name for vampires, including Upir, which they think might have actually been one of the first, especially in like Slavic areas, the first reported vampire of the vampire ilk in Russia in 1029. So they were all over the place. They think that the words, you'll hear Strogir and Strogos a lot. That actually is originates from the Roman word for vampire, which was Strogers. I think it's Strogers.
That's Roman. That sounds German.
It's Roman. Well, German is Latin. Latin is Latin, technically. So it's all over the place. There is, Uparina, Upibira, all kinds of vampire lore is floating around in Europe.
I had heard in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia was the first origin story of the vampires. Like when you've traced back, yes, they're all over the world, but that is the oldest story, was in Mesopotamia.
Yeah, and there even there's even stories in Asia. I was looking, you were laughing because I was on the tail end of it. I was re-upping on my research for the Malaysian vampire called the Penanggal. What did you hear out of that? Penanggal.
What?
Penanggalan, I think. Actually, sorry. Penanggal and Penanggalan are the two. You didn't hear anything?
No.
So this is a Malaysian vampire myth where they believe that this vampire is like, it's a ghost, it's a spirit. It's not Vlad Dracula hanging out in a castle. It's kind of more ethereal. And they believe that it preys on children and pregnant women, and that it comes in the middle of the night, and its head will remove itself. So its head will detach from its ghostly body, and it'll open wide and suck out the essence of the poor victim. And they also think that the only way to destroy this fucking thing is to break glass. Well, you don't have to break glass there. You have to have broken glass handy if you need it, and throw it down its throat. That's the only way. So I don't know if there's in Malaysia, there's someone who is of Malaysian descent who maybe or someone who lived there can tell me whether there's any families who are hardcore enough to like carry or have a broken glass at their bedside. I don't think it's that far, but it's crazy. That's an intense vampire myth, and a lot of in my digging, I noticed that a lot of the vampires, so just dispelling a myth, purely dispelling a myth. We all see modern day vampires as your Draculas, as your Twilights, as all what we do in the shadows. But a lot of these older vampire myths, these things were beastly, and they were hairy, and they were crude, and they were dronish, and they were dumb, and there's varying levels of intelligence, there's varying levels of decay. But this whole Bram Stoker version of Dracula is really just it's a work of fiction. Like there's no real, other than the fact that Vlad the Impaler and Elizabeth Bathory were monsters and they were obsessed with blood. It's not really based in a lot of it. He took a lot of piecemealed a lot of stuff, but there's no mythology where there's this Victorian fucking ghost, this royal ghost that's floating up there.
It makes me sad because that's my vampire. Side note, really quick, we have a viewer that needs advice. What is your advice? Or you need advice? Okay, what do you need? What can we help you with? We will continue.
Wait, you're asking us for advice?
I know. Hopefully it's about vampires. How to slay them?
Should I ask you for advice? My first answer is no. But we'll try.
Go ahead. We might get back to you a little bit later, but because we're gonna keep rolling. So
let's talk about the fact. So there's vampires are not just like they always think of vampires as the undead. They're not just the undead. There's living vampires in some mythology.
Really?
Yes, in some it's just people who are, it's almost like a curse or something like that.
Oh,
another thing to dispel. I'm just gonna start breaking dreams here. Fuck it. The whole mythology of being bit in the neck, it's not really a thing in lore.
Okay.
Apparently, in a lot of lores, the vampires would go straight for the fucking chest, which makes sense. If you're a vampire, I mean, I know the jugular is going to give you a lot of blood, but also there's a heart right in the middle.
Right.
You get past those rib cages, you're all set. That's all great. You're in a gravy train at that point. So that's one I have to dispel, and I apologize about that. The ways people would fight off vampires, not a ton of Bram Stoker stuff. There's no stakes. So there's precautionary stakes, but there's no reported cases of someone actually getting staked while they're alive or undead or whatever while they're attacking. A lot of times it'd be precautionary after they've digged up the bed.
What happened?
It's gonna be a battery swap.
Again? I thought you already did.
Let's wait till it goes red. No, it's not dead. That's recording. It's saying recording.
Oh, but it looks like the things like
it's low. It's low.
Oh my god. I cannot with you.
Yeah. Did you see any ways on can we give if that person's looking for advice on how to kill a vampire, let's let them know a few tips in mythology. Your stakes, not so much.
Yeah.
The
only like true and this goes back to, sorry, can I get into this because it correlates with that?
Sure.
So like I was saying, like the ever first quote unquote documented vampire was supposed to be in Mesopotamia 6,000 years ago, and they were known as the Eduma. They were known not only to suck blood,
sounds like
but
it's
also
from New York. Eduma, huh?
Edema, yeah.
Enema doesn't.
They could also take the essence of life. It is said that edemas, how do you pronounce that? Edimus. Metamucil.
I would say edimuse.
The edimuse.
Not to.
Edema. This town needs an edema.
Hey.
The edema. How do you say it?
You say it.
They say vampires.
You say it however you want to. Make it just feel edimuse. I would say edemas.
Edimuse.
Don't say edemas because it sounds like enemas.
They would say they would come to life. This is
Eddies.
I never heard this, but this totally sounds like folklore and their weird superstitions that let's just call them vampires. The vampires would come to life when a funeral was not done properly. It's anger from you messing up their customs. That's what would bring them back to life. And also they say that they would come back to life if they died like a brutal death. And it's funny because the first thing I thought of was a crow. Yes,
like the movie The Crow.
The first thing I thought was like, oh my god, the crow. Like, okay, and then they go finish business and move on.
Some of these myths, some of these ancient myths, sound like they were like ingested some fucking bad mushrooms and they really got on a fun trip and were just like, what if you like fucked up the funeral and then it came back for revenge? Like, it's that kind of shit. Like, it's magical. I love it.
But not only did
like there's a bear,
the Edimus.
Just call them Eddies because it sounds like enemas. We can't get over this. I can't.
Okay,
I'm gonna hear.
I want to say
their
names properly, but I'm just calling them vampires. They not only did they attack. Vampires. It's funny because like it almost seems like the family had like it was their own superstitions that were worried about the vampires coming, like their family member coming back as a vampire to kill them. But they also were known not to kill just the people who prepared the funeral improperly. They also, were just vicious and would just suck anything that was alive. And also take their essence.
I know a few people who just suck anything that's alive. That's crazy, and that's actually a recurring thing. Is that like a lot of the as like this guy who attacks strangers, like he's a sexy predator. But in reality, a lot of vampire myths are centered around families and neighbors being attacked. Like it's vampires in lore in a lot of different places. They don't really go for strangers. It's like they go attack family members, which correlates to a theory that, you know, that is probably pretty standard, but like that I have that I could tell you later on why it's always centered on family and neighbors. But yeah, sorry I interrupted you.
Oh no, I'm almost getting to back to your
We're gonna get there.
cue of
We're gonna
of,
land
like,
the plane.
how do you stop a vampire, which I thought this was really interesting. So people also portrayed these demons with wings,
Demons.
while others say they were walking corpses.
Corpses.
Also sometimes moving shadows or even rushed winds, and that's where the correlation of shape shifting, I feel like, comes in. Legends on how to protect yourself. Here we go. So archaeologists had found they said, hold on, these creatures, archaeologists have unearthed a number of spirit bowls, mini cauldrons, let's just call them that, which were said to offer protection against the undead. These small bowls were made of clay and inscribed with powerful spells. So to me, it's a mini cauldron.
I love a good mini cauldron.
Yep.
Oh, especially when you're not like you
So
don't have the appetite for the full
that-
cauldron. You want something smaller.
So like you said,
don't wanna feel
so all the
sleepy
theories, like
afterwards.
with the steaks, we've heard, with the garlic, we've heard, but that's one I haven't heard, and that's probably
hear
the
that
most
one.
accurate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and well, also garlic. I think garlic is one of those things that Bram Stoker took because there was garlic myths,
Right.
and one of the reasons why they think that it was prevalent is because there was theories that like anything pungent, anything fucking
Yeah.
that smelled really strong would ward off vampires.
And who knows, when these sorcerers were mixing in their cauldrons, their formula, maybe there was some garlic used.
There was, and for sure, it's been noted that
So-
people would use garlic to
Yeah.
ward off
So yeah, so it makes
vampires.
That makes sense.
You know, that sort of thing. And there's also like the whole, like, you know, that one of the most infamous things for good old Vlad was a cross. That a cross would also
Yeah.
ward off a vampire, and that makes
Mhm.
sense, especially if you consider the time when it was like, if you had anything, a lot of the solution was just either to bloodlet him or pray it away.
Yeah.
So like it was just like one of those things where you carried a cross to ward off any evil, because vampires were synonymous and believed to be, you know, linked with demons and demonology and stuff like that. So that was a natural way. But the reason why there's not a lot of ways to kill a vampire, a lot of like theories and mythology and stuff, is because there's not a lot of tales of people running into vampires walking down the streets. A lot of it was when they would dig up a body and the body wasn't decomposed enough, or the body was in a weird shape, or the liver was white, or there's this thing where it didn't look like. So you buried good old Fred and you came 2 months down the road and he didn't look as decomposed as you thought he would be, or his liver was white, or he still had blood in his system. They would just dub him a vampire. And so that would cause, and a lot of it was hysteria to prepare for that during burials and stuff like that. So a lot of it was that, and kind of alluding to what I said, a lot of the ways they would prepare for this is they would fucking, right as they buried them, they would fucking stake their fucking heart. They would, we saw recently the story about they found the lady with the fucking like cleaver that was pouring. Another thing they did, I don't know if you saw this, but they would also, which it made me smile so much. They would apparently the word on the street about vampires is that they are like they have OCD basically. So what people would do is if they buried someone, with like, oh, Fred was a little weird, and a lot of times if someone was dubbed a vampire while they were living, they either had some poor medical condition or they were a little strange. That was probably the reality of it. But if they thought they were a vampire, they would either put little like objects, a bunch of little rocks and stuff like that, or they would put like 1,000 knots buried with them, because the theory was that vampires couldn't move on and leave the grave until they like sorted out the rocks or untied all the knots.
Oh my god, I never heard that.
Legit, they
saw heard that. That's
like there was a lot of
so
theories that
crazy.
vampires are basically busybodies. That they're like, I have to do this. I know I got to get my cousin, but before I do that, I have to untie all these knots. So they would do that. They would bury him in all kinds of ways. One of the most famous, I don't know if you ever heard of Mercy Brown? So one of the most infamous ways where a vampire was dealt with after the grave was there was a Brown family who lived in Rhode Island in 1892, right there in New England. If this sounds familiar with Hysteria, I mean, hold on, let me change it.
Oh, I didn't do it. Sorry. While you're doing that, I guess I'll just keep talking.
Hold on. Which I love. I love the story. Oh,
hey, she never asked her question.
Oh yeah, you can get the answer.
I can give you an answer now.
We give them all our wisdom as we juggle cameras. What would you do if I sang? Is it that? Does anybody know that song anymore?
I know that song.
Yeah. Does anybody know that song?
It's because we're old. Old.
Oh, we're weathered. Is that better? Is it better to say weathered?
Sure.
Okay. We're running through it. Juggling batteries.
Get it. Okay.
Apologize. So what I was saying is Mercy Brown, the Brown family in Rhode Island in 1892. It's something about fucking that area, the Northeast of New England, with the fucking witch scare and the vampire scare. Like there was a real fucking, they were superstitious motherfuckers like in that area. So, but anyways, in Rhode Island, George and Mary Brown were the mother and father of this big family. They all started coming down with tuberculosis, which was consumption, which actually led to a lot of theories about people thinking they're vampires. Because one of the things with tuberculosis is you would cough, and as you got more sick, you'd start coughing up blood. So you're sick as a fucking dog, and they're like, vampire. You're like, motherfucker, I'm dying here. Which they called consumption at the time, which is, it makes it sound slightly less scary when you call it consumption. But it would kill. There would tuberculosis.
Sounds very serious though.
Was fucking bad, right? And so the first one to pass away was Mary Brown, the mother of the family, and she passed away, and all the other kids started dying. One of the kids who started dying was by the name of Mercy Brown. And as they all started dying, I think there's very few kids, if not just one kid. Let me grab his name. What was his name? I think it was Edwin. Hold on. I want to get this right. Because this is important. Edwin. Yeah. Edwin Brown. Sorry for that delay. But Edwin Brown. So everybody died, including Mercy Brown at the age of 19. And she was the daughter of Mary and George. Well, George was still around, right? And all his kids, except for Edwin, basically were all dead. And so the town, the neighbors and friends and family and stuff started convincing George that it might have been a vampire. And he was reluctant. He was very reluctant at first, but then they convinced him, like this could be a vampire. This was part of a scare that was happening around this time. And so he decided ultimately to exhume his wife and all his past children. And everybody, including Mary, looked like they'd been sitting in a grave for a while, right? And at this point, it's been 2 months since Mercy's passing, Mercy Brown, who again died at 19. They exhumed her.
How old were all their kids? She was only 19.
She was only 19. They were young. I forget how many kids actually passed away, but there was a few that passed away. She was 19, but they were all young. Edwin was very young too, and Edwin was coming down with tuberculosis at this time, and so they were trying to figure something out to save Edwin. And they exhumed Mercy Brown's body, And when they did that, they found that she wasn't decomposed to their satisfaction. And they found blood in her veins still at that time. So what they decided to do, and a bit of paranoia, because they automatically they dubbed Mercy a vampire at that point. His George, Mercy's dad, decided to declare his own daughter a vampire. And so to remedy that, one of the ways that you also too, I forgot to mention, one of the ways that you would get rid of a vampire was burning. More than a stake, actually one of the most frequent ways to rid yourself of a vampire was to burn the body, right? Especially the heart. The heart was key. You had to burn the fucking heart. So what he did is he burned her heart, and he mixed it in with some water and made a tonic, and he fed it to Edwin, his son, as a way to cure him of his consumption. Tuberculosis, one and the same at that time, but they called it consumption.
What?
So Edwin was fed a tonic of his own sister to help cure him from tuberculosis.
Wait, no, his own mother.
His own sister.
Sister. Okay.
Mary was the mom, and Mary was fine. Like she was crumbling in good measure. Like they were happy. And one of the theories, by the way, is that Mercy was so intact because they buried her during winter in an above ground mausoleum. So she was just like I hate to be so crude, but she was like a popsicle. So everything was kind of, it was almost not a mummification, but it was a preservation thing.
It's like when you go to a funeral, like
when you go to a funeral,
when my
or
grandma
when you
died, when I touched her in the open casket, she was cold to the touch, but that's because she's an ice cube. She's frozen. Her face was stiff. You know, everybody's like, oh, it's because she's dead. And like, well, yeah, but also she's been frozen.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, again, sorry to be so crude, but it's like, whenever you have chicken that's going bad, the first thing they tell you to do, if you don't eat it by such and such date, freeze it, right? And it'll make it go much longer. If you don't, if you leave it out, it's going to turn into an Ed Gein experiment or a Jeffrey Dahmer. I've been watching the Jeffrey Dahmer series.
Without me.
Sorry. It's hard during lunch, but it's a good series. I think it's good. I know there's some controversy, blah, blah, blah. Anyways.
I've heard only good things.
I've heard great things, and I've also heard controversy over how they portray him. Anyways, as they try to portray him almost.
It's more artsy. That's why, right?
Not even artsy. They try to portray Jeffrey Dahmer as almost like a I feel like they're trying to make him almost a sympathetic figure. Like he was
the way he was
deranged, and it's not his fault.
People on TikTok were talking more about like how he, like, you are a product of what your parents. It's you mimic what your parents are. It's your parents need to, like, it all stems from them. You know,
it stems partially, but again, it's like
if you fucking got a screw loose, like shit.
There is, plenty of people who's like, a spoiler alert, if the mom has substance abuse problems, right? And the dad is a little tougher, but that was dads during that time, and mom, like there's people who grew up with moms who had substance abuse, and they didn't turn out to be serial killers.
Thank you. Someone just said awesome show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. But anyway, so yeah, that's Jeffrey Dahmer. We should get into. We're gonna do an episode.
Stop fucking watching the series without
on GF. Do you want to watch the series and we'll do an episode on Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna get creeped out. He's icky. Yeah.
I don't think anybody can beat Ed Gein.
I think Jeffrey.
Well, you think Jeffrey Dahmer beats Ed Gein? I'm sorry.
Like, I don't know.
Does anybody beg to differ? Does anybody know about Ed Gein? If you do,
okay, I need to know. I need to know. I think Ed Gein wins. I think you're right. But Jeffrey Dahmer was up there.
Really?
Do you know, like top, all of Jeff
Dahmer? 5? He ate people, right?
Yeah, but
I mean that's bad. But
that'll put you on the list.
I don't know, because there's women that eat their own placenta to preserve.
I don't know where we're going with this analogy, but
so
it's scaring me. I'm frightened.
At the end of
so I could eat my husband.
Okay, I have a question for everybody. We're going on a tangent because that's what we fucking always do.
That's the episodes.
There was a movie I watched. I don't fucking remember it. I think it's from the 80s, and I just remember people died and it fell. They the plane crashed and people were alive, but then
Oh,
people
yeah.
froze to death and they ate their butt cheeks because that's the fattiest part. Because there was no food. Would you now right now you could easily say I would not eat booty or any part of
Would you eat
but
that
if
ass?
you are in that moment, like all shit can change. Like you have to put yourself in that perspective. It's hard to even fathom that. But I will be honest with you, I probably eat a little bit of that booty because I'm going to survive. I have a child. I'm going to do whatever it takes because I am a fighter. So
But here's the
I'm
thing.
not saying that I'm fucking, I understand where Dahmer comes from, whatever. But if I got to eat the butt, I'll eat the butt. I know he had the choice.
He had a
could've-
grocery store around
yeah.
the corner. He didn't
So-
need to.
But what I'm saying is Ed Gein takes cake for
Uh-huh.
me because I ain't gonna be wearing people's masks, faces masks. I'm not gonna dress up in them as an outfit and skin.
Oh,
them.
Ed Gein was like, yeah.
I just, and I think even looking at pictures of him, I look like Dahmer. I don't know why, like he's not as freaky. Ed Gein, his like Google him, everybody, right this second.
Jeff Dahmer's freaky.
His fucking eyes, like ooh, like ugh. There's
Yeah.
nothing there, and that's just like that's where I go.
Yeah.
Wait, somebody knows the name of the movie.
Alive. I looked it up.
Oh yeah, Alive.
There we go.
Got it.
You got it. So yeah. Anyways, Edwin died 2 weeks after drinking his own sister.
Oh, that's really sad.
Like 2 weeks.
Going back to our segue.
Because it doesn't fucking work. So
because he wasn't really a vampire. If he was a vampire.
no, Mercy was supposed to be a vampire.
No, I know, but I'm saying if this whole like.
Could you imagine being
theory.
George? Fucking George. You're convinced by your neighbors. Yeah. Oh, never mind. You're convinced. I was thinking
Never
about
mind.
you. I never gave you my answer about eating humans. But anyway, so just being George, like, could you imagine having the fucking being convinced by your neighbors to dig up your family and then feeding it to your kid and being wrong? Can you imagine that kind of fucking crow you got to eat, that humbleness you got to eat after that?
Yeah, but when you're like Jurassic times call for drastic measures.
Jurassic times?
Jurassic Park times.
Mm-hmm. But you think
like I feel like you were
of
so desperate.
I'm sure he's
for your child's life. Again, like these are all like now that I'm a mom, the things that I think about shit that I would never do. But if it's to save my life and there's potential, they think like even if I know it's not gonna happen, like I'm gonna take that risk.
Yeah.
But then I would also, I think for me, I would also feel like, well, what if that killed him even, faster? I don't know.
It might have. And the thing too, here's
it's
and at that time he's probably like, oh yeah, the vampire got my son too. The vampire cure didn't work or whatever. That's probably, and that gets to me what a lot of the theories around why these vampire mythologies always center around it inflicting friends and neighbors after the grave of whoever the supposed vampires is because they didn't have any fucking clue about disease. Of course, if there's tuberculosis going around, the family and neighbors and friends are going to be getting it.
Right.
Like it's natural for that to happen. So it's like
COVID, you hear like family gatherings, like
that's how it is. And so I think this whole vampire mythology was them not understanding fucking disease, and they were like, oh my god. Like Mercy died and Mercy gave her was sucking the life force out of my other son, but it's really like, no, Mercy gave your other son tuberculosis.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where they had no idea how to comprehend how their whole family was going down. And so they had to blame something and they couldn't blame science. So they had to start blaming their family members out of paranoia.
That's so wild.
I
don't know.
I would eat a human.
Did you know I doing research? Never heard this. You would eat a human?
I think
drastic measures.
I think
hopefully
it depends. I think
who did I marry?
The real question is not would you eat another human if you absolutely had to. It's like where where is your threshold, right? Is it after?
You eat your cat.
Is it 1 week after you stop eating on the trail of ice? Is it 2 weeks? Is it right before you die? Like that's the measure. If you're like,
What is it? You can
if you run
can
out
live,
of,
I know you after like 3 days you'll die from water, but
yeah, you can go
after
like
30
28 days.
28 days.
So if you like, if we're on a trail together and we run out of Cliff Bars and you say, we gotta, so one of us has to die to save the other. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
How about we just take turns, chop off half of our arms?
Okay,
And then
got it.
just gnaw on each
Got it.
other's
So
elbows.
if we run out of Cliff Bars on a 2-hour trail, we'll just start chopping off each other's arms. That seems sensible.
Yeah.
We did it. We figured it out, everybody.
That's what you do.
What would you do?
Hey, have you guys heard throughout Asia? I didn't know this, that vampires are mostly portrayed as female. Sexist. Just kidding.
Why is that sexist? That's
no,
if anything,
I'm just, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Which I thought was kind of interesting. They would prey off of like villages, and the vampires were known to live in the center of the village, and they would remain youthful and beautiful while all of the other people living in their village grew old. They were known as the fox women or the tiger women. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I think I pulled up another story. Let's see if this is good. We're gonna live a story that I wrote down. In 1776, there was a prosperous Exeter farmer by the name of Stukely. What is a fucking Exeter farmer? Hold on. Derailing 101. How to derail a conversation. What is an Exeter farmer? What the fuck is that? Exeter farmer. I don't know. He was a fucking farmer. I don't know what that fucking is.
Thank you guys for being here.
Who cares? Oh.
You're gonna cut that anyways, right?
Fucking asshole. So some guy named Stukely, who was a farmer in 1776.
Who's Stukely? Where is he from? That with a name like that, I gotta know what country he's from. Is it like Sweden?
I think
Dutch.
I think he was from America, I believe.
Stukely.
Let's just go with it.
Spookily.
Anyways.
Sorry.
Of unknown from,
so
as they say in wrestling, from parts beyond. One night, this father of 14, oh my God. Father of 14.
I'm exhausted with one child.
Oh, Jesus. Well, at that point, they're just all, they're taking care of themselves and they're all expendable at that point. Every child is precious. I'm just kidding. The prophetic, one night, this father of 14 has a disturbing dream in which half of the trees in his orchard die, right? He has this dream. Half of his trees are dead. The prophetic nature of the dream starts to become clear when his eldest daughter, Sarah, quickly becomes ill and passes away from tuberculosis, a consumption as they called it. After the burial, the health of another daughter begins to deteriorate in the same way. However, things take a strange turn when this girl claims that the departed Sarah is visiting her every night. So, this other the other daughter is claiming that Sarah is visiting her so Sarah's gone at this point, but Sarah is visiting. During these encounters, Sarah causes her extreme pain by sitting on some part of her body. After his second daughter dies, so she passes away after reporting seeing Sarah, 4 more of Stukely's children then pass away. Desperation sets in when Stukely's wife and another son both start experiencing Sarah's visitation. So now it's not only the sister of Sarah seeing it. Now it's another kid and Stukely's wife. At this point, people become suspicious of the dead. Neighbors assist in exhuming the 6 deceased family members in order to examine the bodies for telltale signs. The remains all appear to be in a normal state of decay except for Sarah's. So this sounds eerily familiar, right? Mm-hmm. This is part of that craze.
I died again.
Swap. This is a fun routine. Enjoy. Keep me on my feet.
Why didn't you prepare?
Does it look like I'm a guy who prepares?
Be prepared. Where are you guys from? We're changing out cameras right now. Right in the middle of this amazing fucking story. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fuck that guy.
That's what editing is
Also
for, I
known as
think.
my husband.
Okay.
Okay.
Kids, this is.
Okay.
You can always just switch back over to the. We'll make it interesting. It's gonna get interesting. Anyways, so Sarah is the first to die. Although she was the first to die, her body is preserved unlike the others. The neighbors observe that the eyes are open, the hair and fingernails appear to have grown, and fresh blood is found within the heart. Familiar, right? This proves to them that Sarah was the cause of the others' deaths. To end this threat, they then cut out the heart and burn it on rocks. Afterwards, the corpses are all reinterred. Although Stukely's wife recovers, his son is too ill and thus becomes the seventh and final victim. Sarah died in 1799, right? She was not the eldest daughter, and it appears that the... Oh, sorry. We'll cut that out. I don't know what this is. So there's some speculation that maybe this story was a little bit made up and it was sensationalized and it was... So these sound familiar. So there was a real scare of when tuberculosis hit and consumption hit that there was a bad seed. There was a bad kid who became a vampire. And that's why they thought this. And so this was a reoccurring theme.
Interesting.
You want to know another fact?
Yeah.
I have 2 family members who are vampires. You want to know why?
I'm gonna be a nice person and not say anything, but I definitely think one is an energy sucking.
So there
vampire.
is
maybe 2 of them.
You got to stop it.
Go.
So there is a myth, a Greek myth of a Calicansaros. I did it. Wherein they think that anybody who is born after Christmas but before New Year's, when they die, they become a vampire. So I have 2 vampires in my fucking family.
Oh my god, that's
my brother and my dad.
That is gosh, I love like these old superstitions.
It's so random.
Fucking hysterical.
Could you imagine being the poor fucker who got born on those days?
Oh
Like,
my
oh
God.
fuck. Everybody's gonna call me a vampire. It's not gonna be cool, guys. It's not gonna be cool.
So I was looking for like biblically if there was like anything like
Lily.
talks
Everybody's
about,
gonna
like,
bring up Lily.
vampires.
Lilith, not Lily.
No,
Lilith Fair.
I didn't even see that. Well, I guess technically because
That's one of those things.
she was a succubus, right? Or yeah. So the only thing I could find in both Judaism and Christianity was incubus and succubus, which we actually did a podcast on that, which was really interesting. And it was said that they just prey off of your emotions and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the only thing that would be similar on a religious stance. I mean, documentation that we have now, like, was there more documentation like 500 years ago, 100 years ago? Probably. I definitely think things have been modified and tweaked with over the years. So who knows if they're trying to like censor what we see in here and things that
you mean in the Bible that there was like reference
Yeah.
to vampires in the Bible? That would be
Maybe.
sweet.
maybe.
And there's also too, I think that
I
one of
mean-
those things is that like that interchanges because a lot of people thought that blood was
Good.
your
The
essence.
answer.
It was part of
Yeah.
the humors. It was like bloodletting was a thing
Yeah.
for
People
a very long time.
kept blood like on their dining room counters, like
We had
hundreds of
Elizabeth
years ago.
Bathory who got blood
bathed in it.
poured on her lips and
Yeah.
possibly
And I mean, in
bathed
a sense, I mean, maybe it's not technically blood, but people use living organisms for their skins today, like stem cells. There's all these creams and ointments that
Oh,
are
we all just
supposedly
vampires.
the fountain of youth, and obviously the more money you have, the better quality you can get of this stuff. But at the end of the day, you know that this once was a living human beings, which is kind of crazy.
Always grown in a lab. Possibility too, which is just as creepy.
Yeah.
Just as creepy. Yeah. Hey, but speaking of vampires, the vampire crept its ugly head because I saw an article.
Mhm.
This might be an aside. Sorry for the tangent, but I had to tell you this story because it made me laugh. So apparently, there's a guy who sold his mom. He sold his mom's body. I should clarify.
Oh my god.
For Alzheimer's research, right? He donated, didn't sell it. Sorry, a very big point of distinction. He did not sell it. He donated his mom's body for Alzheimer's research to help the other poor souls who end up, falling prey.
Is
to
that what she
Alzheimer's.
wanted? I mean, if that's what she
I think
wanted,
that's what she wanted.
then,
Well, that's not the issue.
Is that how she died?
That's not the issue. The issue is that the company that the nonprofit that he donated his mom's body for Alzheimer's research, they turned around and sold it to, I believe, a government contractor or some sort like that for $6,000. So the nonprofit sold it for $6,000.
How did he find out? I
don't know how he found out, but apparently they went and they went on to after the company that bought the body for $6,000. No, they didn't sell it. They used it as an experiment to test blast. Like it was a blast research. So he donated his mom's body for Alzheimer's research, and they sold it for $6,000 for her body to be blown up.
No.
Could you imagine being that guy, that son?
I'm sure he's getting some compensation.
You think? I think he's like calling his lawyer.
I just can't
immediately.
Even, like, why the fuck do they need to blow up a body though? To see like how it splats, like how it.
So you got to see how it splats. You got to see how it splats.
Oh,
what would
God.
What would be the threshold if I were passed away? Hopefully long.
You probably would want that. Like you're the type of guy.
I don't know if I'd want it.
You'd be like, yeah, you can do that to my body after.
What would be the dollar amount it would take though for you to sell my body off?
I would not do that.
What if they're like,
if you wanted it for like,
we'll give you Jeff Bezos
for diabetes research? Yes, like, but no, and if I found out they were doing some shit, I would be suing some asses. But if that's what you genuinely wanted, like,
what if
it would be hard for me because I would want to go and like, I'm so old fashioned. Like I know everybody's like, oh, I just want to be cremated. It's less expensive, blah blah. But I'm old fashioned in the sense where I want to go and visit. God forbid, like you died. Like I want to go and visit you. I want to go and have a picnic, and talk to you, talk. I don't know. I know. That's just how I feel.
That's all good. I like that. That's romantic. I love it. But would you, if I were to decide that I wanted to donate my body
I would respect it. Like, can I cut off your hand and have it cremated or something?
No, but that's not what I want to do. I want to tell you what I want to do with my body now. I want it to be donated to a company that is willing to go fly it over like the Himalaya, like the what's the famous one that hikers go over? Some tough mountainous climb in the snow, and just drop my body over there so that if people get hungry and they're starving, they could eat my body. Stop. They could eat my ass. Don't. Would you do that if I said that? If I gave clearance on that?
Are you allowed to do that?
No. No.
Why the fuck would I do that?
What company would do that?
I mean,
sure. There's got to be. Well, there's probably like.
I would say no, regardless, even if some fucking wild company actually did that. I would say no, just because I would be more
defied.
No, not even. I would be more worried that like it wouldn't even go to like a human. Probably some animal be like, yeah,
I'd be fodder for some mountain goat or some bullshit.
It wouldn't even go to like.
What animals live that high up in the mountain? I'd be
plane that crashed in that area.
Oh man, I could get eaten by penguins. Yeti?
Yeah.
I could be Yeti food.
Yeti and spaghetti.
I love it. That'd be cool.
The Yeti be eating your spaghetti.
My innards. We gotta do. We still haven't done an episode on fucking Bigfoot and Yetis and all that shit.
Well, we did.
Did we do Yeti?
Well, I
can't remember
came
anything.
up with the idea that the story we did of the Russian
Oh, you had
backpackers.
the Dyatlov's pass. You thought maybe it was a Yeti.
Yeah, I think the way that they were talking about this creature, like that
Feature
was
creature.
that it had powers and it was very strong, something like they'd never seen before. I definitely speculate it could have been a Yeti.
Yeah, it could have been. It very well could have been. Hey, so this has been an episode of Extra Normal Podcast. We had a lot of fun. I mean, there's still vampire stuff to talk about. We didn't cover the basis. We're probably going to move on to a different subject, but we might revisit this. I
Yeah.
like this.
I think. I mean, I'm happy with what we talked about because
I
I
am
feel like.
ecstatic.
I mean, do I want to talk about Bram Stoker's, like more of that style all day and
Well,
all
that
night?
style is
But
like
I
hard to
wanted-
find.
But I wanted more origins.
Mm.
I was craving to know the origin stories.
What's the real scoop on vampires? What's the real scoop?
I mean, what I get out of like my research, they got kind of all blend into the idea of being shapeshifters to me and telepathic.
They're always they blend in to be fucking murky for me. Like they're just like, like there was so much like dubbing fucking shit. Vampires are dubbing.
Yeah.
Like they're just like you coughed up a little blood. Don't go see a doctor. You're a vampire. Like
Yeah.
that was the kind of like answer for all that shit.
It's kind of like it reminded me a little bit of like the witches. It was like a bunch of bullshit. Like, oh,
Yeah,
you're
it's like
acting
hysteria.
this way.
It's
You
all
must
fucking
be
hysteria.
a witch. You're gonna die. Like, yeah, it's the hysteria.
It's fear and paranoia because they had no idea what was going on. Like,
yeah,
which is why we get fear
they're
and paranoia.
weird superstitions and all that bullshit.
All that joy. Well, again, this has been an episode of Extra Normal Podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all this stuff. You can email us. We're all there at Extra Normal Podcast. So you can email us at extranormalpodcast@gmail.com if you are a vampire or if you know a vampire.
Or if you just like to eat ass.
If you like to eat ass, this could get bad.
No.
This could get rough. But thank
Oh,
you
God.
so much
I'm dying.
for watching and or listening.
Fine.
That's fine. We're done.
Denzo.